Great to have you back on the show. How have you been?
Jared, been great.
Oh, look, we have a special guest joining us to talk about your news. Kirk, great to have you here.
Hey, how you doing? How you doing, Jared?
I'm doing well. I'm excited to have both of you on. This is new. This is a great surprise. Uh, well, let's kick things off. First off, Shrisha, tell us a little bit about this big news that you're sharing, and then since Kirk is this is his first time coming on, would love a quick intro after that. But let's start off with share the news. What's the excitement?
Yeah, Jared, I'm really excited about this new thing for lumber. We are acquiring BuilderFax and can't be more excited about what this means to the industry, how it will bring more innovation. I will leave it to Kirk to talk more about this excitement, but really excited to be bringing this to the market.
Thanks, Kirk. Yeah, would love to first let's hear a little bit about you since they're getting to know you, and then tell us your point of view on this news. Very exciting.
Yeah, it's good to get a little idea of my background because you kind of get an idea where I'm coming from. But yeah, I started 45, actually 46 years now ago. I started in the construction industry after getting a civil engineering degree, and actually went to work for the company my dad, who he worked for in summers after World War II. He got out of the military and while going to college, he worked for Kiewit. They're called Peter Kiewit, but Kiewit is Kiewit Construction Group, we call them today. 140-year-old company. He worked for him, and so when I got out of college and said I was going to go to work for a contractor, he said, "Well, there's no better contractor than Kiewit to go to work for." So I did, and so I started out with this engineering degree, thinking I knew all about what we were going to do, and Kiewit put me on a subway job in Baltimore, Maryland, and I quickly learned. I understood the engineering, but I really didn't know what it took to build work. And Kiewit has had a tradition forever because they do basically just self-performed construction, billions of dollars worth. But they stuck me out in the field. I worked as a concrete foreman. I worked as a pile driver foreman. Worked as an iron worker foreman. Then eventually worked as a craft superintendent over those types of trades, and then eventually started running my own projects. But that time in the field, I real quickly learned the craftspeople are the ones that really build our work, and they're really the ones with the skill and that history and that knowledge and the work experience that know how to build the amazing stuff that we build in the industry. So I had a 35-year career at Kiewit. I ended up the last 7 years I was on the board of directors. The last 5 years I was in a role that was the equivalent of like a chief operating officer role, where I was kind of redefining some of the things that how Kiewit was doing their business. It was kind of an exciting opportunity to change things around. We're updating our technology. We were doing a lot of reorganizing. But as we listed out all the problems we wanted to solve, the number one problem that we listed is we need to do something about the shortage of available skilled craft. And as we went through those issues, that was the one we decided that as a company we couldn't solve. That's an industry problem, not a company problem. We solved a lot of our estimating problems, our cost management, many other problems. Actually started a software company called N8 that is a great software for a lot of those types of solutions. But we realized that that's an industry problem. So then I retired from Kiewit, and I've spent, now almost 11 years, 10 and a half years on other industry leader boards. I'm on DPR's board, Rosen's board, ESI's board, and a mechanical firm, JR Merritt's board. And on these boards, I'm sitting there being part of discussions talking about projects and their problems. And the recurring theme is, we're short craft. Or a lot of times we're even talking about not pursuing work because we don't think there's sufficient craft to pursue a project. And I'm sitting there on these boards saying, someday somebody's got to do something about this. Why it's getting worse, even all my time at Kiewit, and now post Kiewit, I'm seeing problems getting worse, not getting better. and so one day I was home here about 2.5 years ago, and my wife said, "Would you quit complaining about something? Why don't you do something about it yourself?" So I decided to take some of my money, and I took some of my friends and family money, as they call it, and created a software company. Started as called Builder Success because my idea was to create software for a craft person. That's my consumer. Every other software, they're thinking of the company as the consumer, just like lumber. The company is the consumer of that software. I wanted a software that the consumer was the craft person themselves. Something built just for them. Something didn't matter if they're union or non-union. It didn't matter what trade they're in. Didn't matter whether they've been in the trades for 20 years or they're an 18-year-old coming out of high school. I wanted this to be their tool. And so I got a team together because I really don't know much about software. I just know about the industry, and I was trying to get some people a lot younger than me together with me to help me put together a team. And we first thing we did is we went out and kind of benchmarked with a lot of craft, had a bunch of meetings with craft, and said, let's describe the problems you see as a craft person, and think about the 18-year-old coming in as an apprentice. What kind of challenges, and this reoccurring problem that a lot of people do not stop and think about that differentiates construction from any other industry that I know of. There's a couple smaller industries that might have a similar problem, like maybe the movie industry, because they have set designers and builders. But if you think about construction, craft are hired for a project. That puts them in a payroll situation that is quite different than any other industry. If Caterpillar hires people for their line, they're Caterpillar employees. They probably end up with a Caterpillar email. They end up with, they're company employees, and they're put into the company LMS, HRIS systems. All those systems are there for managing them through their career, right? Because craft, a line person could be plant manager someday, right? In the construction world, they show up, they're in a temporary payroll because, a contractor doesn't know what job they're going to get until they're selected, right? They bid jobs, and all of a sudden, hey, we got that bridge. All right, well, now we need the craft to build the bridge. Well, the craft that are in that general region are the craft you're going to hire. In fact, in a union area, you're required to draw from the local union, the local of that union. And for all the different trades. And so those craft now become an employee of the company, but then when the project is done, they're laid off, or maybe even just their phase of the project. They may only be on the project for 6 months and their phase is done. So this barrier of this temporary employment nature of how a craft person working for a contractor is to me the root of the problem. And so we spent time with the craft about this and how could we facilitate them to better be able to advocate for their experience, their past training, their credentials, and their career desires. Maybe they want to be a foreman. Maybe they want to be a general foreman. Maybe they want to become a superintendent. How do we facilitate that for you? And we created a software we started calling Builder Success. I'm meeting with some of the craft, and this young craftsman, I think he was a 3-year apprentice, turned to me and said, you're building the Carfax of my career. And I'm like, oh, I like that. If you think about it, those of us been around for a while, buying a used car 20 years ago was a scary deal. It's not a scary deal today because of Carfax. Well, we're trying to do that with, hiring that craftsman. You know what you're getting for experience. You know what you're getting for credentials. And so we renamed it to BuilderFax and been on a few podcasts. We've got a lot of visibility, but honestly, my lack of knowing how to run a software company, I'm a contractor. I'm not a software guy. So one of the leaders at DPR, I'm on their board, and one of their leaders, a fellow named Atul, said, you really know the industry, but you really kind of don't know. You kind of suck about this software business. And he said, I got this friend, Shrisha, that is starting up and jumped into the construction world because he's good at software and he wants to bring his background to the construction industry. He said, to be honest with you, Shrisha needs somebody that knows something more about construction. So that was kind of the initial part of it, how Shrisha and I met about 1.5 years ago. Been working through it. I've continued to get going what we were doing. Shrisha's been going what he's doing. And we finally decided, hey, let's do it together. And so we're merging the two efforts.
I love it. No, that's it. We love that context because honestly, no one was going to know that about you, and that led into how you met, right? That background and what you built. And um, what a cool, like, the Carfax, or the, like, it just it makes so much. It's the one of the easiest ways to explain what you do in a second, right? I love that. um and I'm gonna kick it back over to Shreesa. Obviously, like, this is a really cool relationship. It seems like there's several things that you both bring to the table, right? With the experience and the tech, and what are really the next steps from here? So this is obviously a huge deal. Congratulations to both of you. But where do you see this heading from here, Teresa?
Yeah, Jared, I think I may have, I think I mentioned in your last podcast about how we care about the workers. Right now, we are serving the construction firms, but in the end, we want to enhance the life of the workers who are the nuts and bolts of any construction project. And so I got inspired by what Kirk is doing, and that's what led to the coming together of the two companies, and we want to carry that momentum forward. So BuilderFax forever will be a free application on the Apple and Android store, which any construction worker can download and start using it. And we are going to only take Kirk's vision forward, where apart from the credential tracking, apart from the training certificates that will be there in the wallet that BuilderFax has, we're going to add career guidance. We're going to add financial guidance. We're going to add mental wellness. So we're going to build this application to that point where it really brings the life of the workers forward, upwards.
I love that.
Yes. Yeah, that is it exactly. I mean, I should have mentioned that we are in both the Apple and the Droid stores as a free app, and as part of our initial discussions, I made it clear, and Tricia jumped right on it. But it will be a free app forever for the craft person. And again, it's for every craftsman, somebody that maybe even just considering to be a craft person. It could be a high school junior that's thinking about getting into the trades. Get it onto their phone. It's free. They go to either store, Apple or Droid store, download it, start filling your credentials. Then when you start going into the actual, formal education, maybe it's a community college, maybe you're getting some other NCCR classes, or maybe you went into an apprenticeship school, and get them to start actually putting in validated education. And then when you start going to work for contractors, ideally contractors that are using the lumber software, they can start filling your wallet with more credentials, more training, and validating it in a way that the rest of the industry can trust it. That's a big part of what's missing. You need to have that true validation, because honestly, a lot of these credentials, OSHA requires them. I mean, and people get in trouble if somebody isn't properly trained on using a certain tool, or running a certain piece of equipment, or confined space, or working at heights without the tie-off policies. I mean, these things are real deals. They're life and death things, and so the industry's got to know that that's real training that person really took. They got it this date, and it might even have expiring dates, and that they have to go back and get continuing education. And so it's got to be a more sophisticated way of integrating into that person's wallet. But we wanted to start with a free wallet on their phone. So I've got it on my phone. I'm not a craftsman, but I've got it on my phone. I'm actually using it for my pilot certificates and my aviation medical, and start sending me 2 months in advance. Your medical's expiring. You better set up an appointment. So, I mean, it can be used for a lot of credentials, but it's obviously geared for the construction.
I love it. It's and how do you view, Teresa, this kind of playing into? I know you just mentioned, right, that you care about the workforce. How do you see this kind of adding to what your vision is moving forward from here? Obviously, you're still continuing on with Kirk's vision, which is really cool, and that's how these relationships are a good match. But from your point of view, where do you see things heading?
Yeah, absolutely. So, where it'll be a major differentiator for lumber going forward is when these workers who are using the free app to track their certificate credentials show up on a job site, they are employed with a construction firm, then using their free app, they are onboarded to lumber in 5 minutes because the data seamlessly goes from BuilderFax to Lumber. Their credentials are verified. So it doesn't take a long time for these workers to get onboarded. And then the other thing is, let's say there's a construction firm that's working for Meta or for Google or for one of the big guys to build their data centers. Their credentials need to be verified, it needs to be up to date. If they are operating a heavy machinery, it's very important for the compliance reason, for the safety reason, that it's verified that their certificate is matching. So all of that will happen in Lumber in an automated fashion. And if the credential is not working, then their permission to work on the job site may go away, their access control may apply. So that's where in Lumber it'll be a major differentiator.
Yeah, and Jared, there's two other stories I'd like to share from these craft meetings I had. It was a fun, about 6 months, we were going around meeting with groups of 8, 10, 12 craft on different projects and throwing this idea at them, kind of test driving it. And I was in this one meeting, and this craftsman said to me, "Hey, this is a great idea. I love what you're doing. Will I be able to know what companies have signed up to use BuilderFax in the future?" And I said, "Well, yeah, it'll be on the website, and also now it'd be the Lumber website." But I said, "Sure, why?" And now his HR manager sitting in the room, and he looked at me, he says, "Because once you get this up and running, those are the only companies I'm going to come to work for." I said, "Really?" He says, "Because they're showing me they care about my career." And so if you think about it, this concept can start helping contractors differentiate themselves to be the employer of choice. We're not going to make the shortage of highly skilled craft go away tomorrow, right? But we sure want to, for the better contractors, they want to get the cream of the crop. They want to get the best craft out there. And this is a tool to help attract those craft because you're showing you're interested in their career. And I thought that was, put very well. Hey, those are the companies I'm going to, send my application to for my next job, only if they have, BuilderFax that they're utilizing. So now it would be this integration with Lumber. But the other comment from a totally different meeting I was having with craft, these two craftsmen stood up in the meeting and said, "We want to talk to you about this problem." I said, "Really?" They said, "No, we've been with this company for 6 years, and we worked on 5 different projects in 5 different divisions, profit center groups of this company. And 5 times in 6 years, I've been trained on the same piece of equipment. Gone through the exact same videos, the exact same, little training packet." He said, "And I show up and I explain to that project manager that I've already gone through that in your company." And he said, project manager looks at me and says, "I can't believe that. I have to, for compliance reasons, I have to start all over again." And the HR manager sitting there, and she said, "Yeah, and I waste 8, 10 hours of my time indoctrinating all these craft in stuff that I know they've already been trained in." But she said, "Yeah, we have to have these compliance records. It's required by law. We have to have these, and so we've got to have them in there." Then the craftsman said, "But let me tell you, put yourself in my shoes. I say I've already been trained in that in the same company, and I understand what the training's about, and I'm being told doesn't matter. Sit down, shut up, and listen." He said, "What kind of a relationship do I have day one on that project?" And now we have to overcome that through the life of that project. We're saying we want you involved in the safety program. We want you engaged in what we're doing. But day one, we're saying just shut up, sit there, and listen. That's not a good way to start the process off. So we've got to find a much better way to get this whole relationship between the craft person walking through the door and the contractor that needs to hire them. Yes, they got to create their compliance records, but there's got to be a way that we can do this in a more professional manner. That young HR lady said, to be honest with you, the last couple times he showed up, he should have run the class. He knew the training material better than I did. And so, so maybe they do that, or maybe there's an abbreviated, project specific piece. And then maybe there's a test just to prove that you still recall what you learned. But let's respect what they've done before. Let's show that respect the day they show up. So those are a couple stories I wanted to pass along to you about this.
I appreciate you sharing. And I look forward, Kirk, to having you come back on at some point. We can go through some other stuff. And Teresa, I'm sure I have a feeling you might break the record for most appearances on this show. So we'll see what ends up happening there. But thank you both for joining me here today, and congrats to both of you again. And look forward to staying in touch.